So this is the capture screen. This is what you'll find every time you go into capture mode. The analogy that I like to use for OCT with patients is imagine the colour fundus image is the top of a cake. Most patients will be used to the colour fundus image, and we know that there are layers underneath that image, but we can't really see them with the colour fundus camera. With OCT, it allows us to take a slice through the cake and then turn that slice side on and allows us to take a look at the layers going down. And that's one of the real advantages that it gives us, and it's a great way of describing that to patients, but also helps us to understand the different scan types. So if you look here on the screen, there are 8 posterior scan types with the Nidec Retina Scan Duo OCT. The most basic scan type is essentially a single slice through the cake. It's one line scan, what we call a B scan, that gives us one side-on image of the retina when we've taken the scan. Below that is the macular cross, which is essentially 2 line scans at 90 degrees to one another, again allowing us to look vertically and horizontally at B scans through the retina, just at one point. Probably the most important scan, as you can see on this list, is the Macular Map, sometimes known as a macular cube or a macular mesh or a volumetric scan as well. Macular Map takes lots and lots of vertical and horizontal line scans together and builds up a cube of data. This scan gives us a 3D view of the whole posterior pole, in this case up to 12 by 9 millimeters, but that also allows the device to take actual measurements of the patient's retina and compare them to the normative data mentioned before. So very, very important scan and still quite quick and easy to take. Beyond that, we have the Macular Multi. It comprises of 5 vertical and 5 horizontal scans. You can change the distance between each of those scans, that's known as the pitch, between what are known as the raster lines. So you can go all the way up to a cube or a grid of data like so. So that's quite a useful scan, again, for certain particular types of conditions, which I'll mention later. Below that, we also have the Macular Radial, which is lots of slices essentially through the cake on a clock face pattern, which gives us a very, very good screening view of the macular area. Below that, we have what's called a disc circle. The way I like to describe that is imagine you could miniaturize yourself and stand in the disc and take an image all the way around through 360 degrees and then unfold that image into a panoramic view. That's essentially what this scan does, and it compares retinal nerve fibre layer thickness again to normative data. However, the second most important scan, or equal most important scan, is what's known as a disc map. That takes lots and lots of vertical and horizontal line scans through the optic nerve head and disc, but also takes a disc circle as well. So very, very useful scan once more, comparing retinal nerve fibre layer thickness to normative data, so vital for early diagnosis of certain conditions, particularly glaucoma. Finally, we have the disc radial scan, which again is essentially clock face slices through the optic nerve head, allowing us better resolution images of the optic nerve head side on as B scans. Again, a very useful scan to take, but primarily I would say the Macular Map and the disc maps are the most important scans on this device. Now that we've seen the basic scan types, it's also important to mention that you can take a scan in different sensitivity modes. Here it's currently in regular sensitivity, and it will then capture 53,000 A scans per second. However, if a patient has some degree of lens opacities, or if you want to increase the resolution of the captured image, you can go into fine mode, which will capture 26,000 scans per second. It takes a little bit longer to capture a scan. Or you can go even further into ultrafine mode, which captures about 13,000 A scans per second and takes longer still. You will get very, very high resolution images with that, but also if a patient has some degree of lens opacities, it's much easier to get a series of good scans together to be able to actually assess their retina in more detail. Looking at the screen here, you'll notice that we are in OCT mode. There is the option to switch to cornea, which we'll show you later, for anterior scans. You can also switch just to FC, which is fundus camera, which allows us to take colour fundus images, and you will also notice that within that we have a panoramic view available and anterior photography, and even here the FAF button, which is fundus autofluorescence. You can also go into OCT FC mode, which basically allow the device not only to capture an OCT scan from this list, but then that will be followed by a colour fundus image. So very effective to do quick scans and quick colour fundus images. And finally, probably the most effective mode of all, in my opinion, is combo mode. And combo mode allows us to pre-program a list of certain scan types, one after the other in each eye, followed, if you wish, by a colour fundus image, or even 2 different colour fundus images with different positions, maybe for diabetic screening. So there's a great array of different options in terms of scan types and mixing the scan types with colour fundus images and even fundus autofluorescence. So very versatile in that regard.